What's going on today, everybody? Hope you're having a fantastic day. I know I am. I'm going to be working here on the old work truck, and I've got something that's been an annoyance for a long time. The clock on the radio and the radio station dial go dim every once in a while. You'll be driving, and after a while, you'll look over and it's dim, and you'll try to change something, and the radio's on, and then you go ahead and you tap it a couple times, and it actually, the wording or the screen pops back up to where you can actually see stuff. Now, this is pretty common on Fords. They have a problem with their soldering in the back, so we're gonna go ahead and take the radio out, take the radio apart, get to the back of the screen, and actually resolder all the pins back to the board. And that's the problem. So we're gonna go ahead, I'll show you what I'm talking about, but we're gonna go ahead and remove this radio from the truck and get it over to the workbench. So here's the problem. You can see that the radio is on, and I've got stuff, and if I turn the lights on, it doesn't change. But if I go ahead and I start tapping on it, well, now all of a sudden I've got my lights back. Now that's due to the prongs in the back are coming unsoldered from the board back here. So we're gonna go ahead and remove this and get this fixed. So there's two little cubby holes right here. There's a little 12-volt one right here, and then the sync one on this side. Both of these come out, and that will expose two screws sitting back here that need to come out. If you look down on the bottom of them, you can see that there's a little cutout right there. That cutout is for a screwdriver. And it will just pop this right out. Now that we've got both of them out, be very careful on these tabs are kind of weak, but we'll go ahead and remove the clips from the back side on both of these and this one, and you can see our bolt right there that we need to take out, and there's one on the other side. Now we got both the screws out, we'll go ahead and just give it a pull right here. There it goes. Now that our whole dash is out of the way, we can get to the bolts that we actually need to. So, 4 more bolts to remove the radio. And we'll take the radio out. Now we've obviously got to undo all the connections in the back of the radio. We've got our antenna and our tube power and a speaker output stuff. So we'll go ahead and undo those, and then we'll take the radio out. Now we'll go ahead and take this thing to the workbench to make it easier to work on. So here's the fun part. We actually have to go right behind this screen, and down between there you can kind of see that the motherboard is sitting right in this zone. So we got to go ahead and take this plastic cover off, and that entails us getting to one right there and one right there on this side, and then 2 on the other side, Torx bits, T10s. We'll go ahead and start removing this to get this black fascia cover off of it. Before we start tearing into this radio, I'm actually gonna go ahead and get my soldering iron out, because that's gonna take me a while to warm up. Get my soldering tools, my flux, and my soldering wire and soldering iron out. Plug the soldering iron in, because it's gonna take a while to heat up. So we'll go ahead, do that, and then we'll take that fascia off. Now that we got our screws out, we gotta go ahead and actually bend these tabs right here down, because it's actually holding the fascia on. So we'll give it just a little bit of a bend down on all 4 of them. And now the front should go, yep, there it goes. Goes right past where we need it to go. Do the same to the other side, there's 4 of them. And now with that, we've got our front fascia part completely removed from our radio, and it's just held in by this little connector, those 4 bolts and those 4 pins. Before we forget, let's go ahead and push these back up, because we're going to need those up a little bit to hold the fascia back on. Make sure that we don't forget down the line. So we'll go ahead and get all 4 of them bent up just a little bit, not much, just enough to get out of the way. And then we'll go ahead and remove these Torx bits. Now these don't look the same, and no, they're a smaller Torx bit. So let me grab the next one. So these Torx are a T8, and there's one up here, one right here, one down in this corner, one right here, one right here, one right here, one right here, and one right there. That looks like all of them. Looks like I might have lost a couple, actually. Huh. Okay, we'll keep taking these out. Gonna have to remove the old volume knob. Give it a nice pull out. And now we've got our two separated. Definitely clean it out before I put it back in. So these are the little fingers that are the problem. There's more on this side too, so we gotta go ahead and resolder all those. And now we'll go from the back and resolder them because they're a lot easier to get to and there's already solder on them. So we'll get to it. Here's the rubber piece. So here's the easiest way to tell which ones you actually need to solder. So there's two on this side, your in and outs, two on this side, in and outs. Everything that's in a nice row right there. And then you'll end with two in and out, two in and out, and everything in between those. So there's two that are grouped together, kind of separated from everything, on each of the four corners. And if you don't know, you can always flip it over and see, okay, that's the one I need for that. You can kind of tell generally where they're at. Now they're also a lot different than everything else because these are actually pin styles that go through. So they actually stick through just a little bit. There's a couple over here for a volume knob. But those pins stick through just a little bit, and those are the ones that we want to go through and hit. So this is all I'm doing, is I'm taking my soldering iron and just touching the tip until that pin bends over a little bit. Bends over, just resetting all that solder that it can connect to it again. Just hold slight pressure on it, wait for it to start moving, and then take the soldering iron off. So now that we've got all of our main boards done, if you want a little extra credit, you can do your main connectors. That can sometimes be the problem, but 90% of the time, it's one of these outer groups of four, that are causing the problem, because those are your power supply for your top, your bottom, and each side. It's broken into 4 segments, and then these ones control kind of the numbers inside of them. So we're having troubles with power supply, not the numbers, right? So most likely it's these outer 4, so make sure to hit those 4 good. I just hit all of them because if those 4 are going bad, they're usually all going bad. And then I like to hit this connector just to make sure they're all nice and good. Now we're gonna go ahead and clean this up a little bit because I noticed that there is a little bit of corrosion over here. So we'll go ahead, get this board all nice and cleaned up. Since it's pretty dirty in there, we'll clean both sides. We still got a lot of dust and debris. Make sure there's nothing getting inside our crystals and whatever. So we'll go ahead, dust this off, clean it up, and then we'll go ahead, dust all that stuff off, because that's gross. Now, for even more extra credit, I'm going to go ahead and take some Q-tips, and every one of these little squigglies right here, these little squigglies are buttons. I'm having troubles with my buttons as well. They're kind of sticky. Now, that being said, it's probably on that side. But we're going to go ahead and clean those up, make sure that all my contacts are nice and clean and good to go. So a little isopropyl alcohol, Q-tip, scrub, dialed. Now we've got all of our little contacts nice and clean. You can see how dirty they were. Clean them all up, just a little scrub on them, make sure they're nice and shiny again. Lastly, we got to get all that isopropyl out of there. It'll eventually dry out, but in all those tight little nooks and crannies, it'll puddle up a little bit. And it's hard to get out. So we'll go ahead and take a little bit of air, be very careful with it, and just gently blow off the board and make sure that we got all the nooks and crannies nice and dry and nothing's gonna spark, because if you have water between those, or isopropyl alcohol acts like water, it's a conductor, it'll jump over to another thing and fry stuff. So definitely want to make sure we take our time, put it back together, make sure it dries, and that's where this aids. It's just a little bit of air helps push that stuff out to where it can get to a nice dry area, or a nice big surface area, and dry out easier. We got everything nice and cleaned up. If you really want to do the best you can, there's 4 little tabs on here that release this back black plate right here, and you can get to all your buttons. Be careful, because if you get that out, you tip this over, all your buttons are coming out. So I don't need to do that. It's not that bad. There are just a couple that were sticking, and I seem to be able to fix it with some air and just blowing it through the sides, some alcohol through the sides, and making sure that it's not sticky anymore. So we're going to go ahead and put our pads in and then reinstall our board here. Make sure that everything's nice and lining up. Then we'll go ahead and take all of our screws and put our screws in. Now we got to reinstall our faceplate onto the radio. And the biggest thing is make sure that this connector matches that connector. They should just drop together. You can use your pin holes right here and the screw holes as guides. Make sure that you're lining up. You don't want to force it, but you might have to put a little bit of pressure behind it to make sure that it goes in. So I'm going to do this with 2 hands and not break something. And then lastly, we will go ahead and reinstall our volume knob. Don't forget those 4 little Torx screws. Almost forgot. And then we'll go ahead and put our knob back on our radio. Well, I installed it once and I had one pin that wasn't done, I guess, good enough. So I went through and I redid all of my main pins to that board. Had a problem still, and I actually went through and did all these resistors that I could get to. Pretty much everything on this board I went through and resoldered. Went through and redid all of it again just to double check. I went above and beyond. I'm pretty sure it was one of these resistors, because when I went to do one side, the whole thing came off. So that means that the other side wasn't connected. That's probably where my problems arise, was this little resistor in here. One of these 4. So I've gone ahead and I've just resoldered everything. Now let's go double check, make sure everything's good to go, and then we'll put it all together. There we go. We've got all of our functionality going and it works good. Now I've got some resetting to do on a couple things, but it looks like all of my buttons are working. Oh, look at that. So now we can go ahead and reset our time to whatever we need to do and be done with this. Put our dash back together. Well, there we go. Saved ourselves a trip to the dealership, and we actually got it fixed for close to nothing. I already had the soldering iron and soldering stuff, so pretty easy to do. That's how you fix it. It's a very common problem among a lot of Fords. Even some Chevys have the problem, but Ford is the main one for having that little, I don't even know if it's an LCD screen. That little screen, the prongs just go bad. They use really bad solder that degrades over time. It heat cycles too much, and then it loses connection. Looks like it's still soldered, but it's not. So you just go through, throw some new solder on it, and then reconnect those pins, and everything turns out hopefully okay for you. Turned out okay for me. Took me 2 tries. I had to go back and redo it because I missed a pin, or one of the resistors or something was problematic. So I did manage to put it in, found out it was still messed up, take it back out, and hit a lot more of the resistors and other connectors. Made sure that I really went through and made sure I had good contact with everything, stayed on. The those pins for a little bit longer. Just make sure that there's good connection, because without good connection you won't have good power going to whatever needs power that's not getting power. So with that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. You enjoy the rest of your day. I'm gonna enjoy the rest of mine. Take it easy, everyone. Peace. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Peace.